What will the 2026 Detroit Tigers offense look like? We ask that question today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome all. Hope you all are having a fantastic Tuesday. Today we do a conversation we do every year, and this is always one of my favorite episodes when the fall comes around, and I'll be honest with you, usually we do this episode, for those who have listened for multiple years, when the season is actually still going on. And the reason why I like to do that, it's almost always in, mid or even late September, is it kind of gives people a decent idea of who is maybe on the outs, who is fighting for their job next year, etc., while there are still games to be played. Now, this year was different because there was just so much happening in the month of September that I genuinely didn't feel like it was right to be like, hey, let's talk about 2026 while the team is collapsing in front of our eyes. I couldn't imagine that would have gone over very well. And honestly, it felt dirty to me too, which is why we didn't do it. But now we'll do it today. And that is just talking straight up about what the 2026 Tigers lineup will feature. That also, that was worded terribly. The 2026 lineup, who from the 2025 lineup will be back in the spring for Detroit. So we're literally just going to go position by position, as we always do. Like I said, we do this every year. And I think it's kind of a fun exercise as, again, World Series. I'm recording this right before Game 3. Excited for that. Before the World Series ends and the offseason kind of starts picking up quickly. So let's start with the catcher position. I don't think there's any change here, and I don't think it's really needed. I also want to preface this whole conversation with this. This is what I think will happen, okay? This is a don't get mad and point your finger at the messenger moment for some of these conversations, okay? This is not my ideal scenario or what I would do or what I love. This is what I think 2026 is going to look like. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled programming. Catcher, I think it's Dingler and Rogers. I have no issue with this one. This is what probably I would do as well. I guess in a perfect world, you get someone who's a better offensive threat than Jake Rogers, but he actually hit pretty decently in the last 6 weeks-ish of the season. But the biggest thing here is Dylan Dingler's really good, and Jake Rogers is good defensively. And out of a backup catcher, I feel like sometimes we watch our own team so much that we forget what 29 other teams look like. Nobody has like two prolific hitting catchers. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. There's like, I guess, 2 or maybe 3 teams that come to mind. The Tigers as a whole in 2025 had the 5th most WAR out of the catcher position. That's a massive win for an organization that just a couple of years ago was doing a revolving door of like minor league contract guys and depth guys and 1-year major league contracts type of players. Now they have multiple catchers who, again, now that Dingler's here, I don't really need Jake Rogers starting every day, considering he has a hard time hitting 200. But I'm totally okay with him catching once or twice a week and providing good defense behind the dish. And obviously, again, Dylan Dingler was arguably the second best player on this entire roster this year. So I don't think catcher looks too much different. I think the only maybe thing they address is they sign some minor league catching depth, which they have done every year of the Scott Harris era, just to ensure that if one or both of those guys were to get hurt, that they have some sort of semblance of, close to, if not just straight up major league talent that they can put behind the plate. First base, Spencer Torkelson. I think he's back. I don't think this is too long of a conversation either, to be completely honest with you. He is not a perfect player, okay? There is plenty with Torkelson that we will talk about. We haven't done Torkelson's deep dive yet. There's plenty that I'm going to highlight and address, and plenty of areas of improvement that I would still really like to see from him before I declare him like the first baseman guaranteed for the next 10 years or whatever, right? But ultimately, he had the fourth most home runs out of any first baseman in Major League Baseball. I should say and clarify, this is from the first base position, not all people who played first base or even all people who primarily played first base. This is literally the amount of home runs while the person hitting was the first baseman in that baseball game. So I think Torkelson was 2 or 3 home runs. He was technically the DH or a pinch hitter. And so whatever. Yeah, either way, you get the sentiment. Not going to be too far off in terms of numbers. Top 5 home run hitter out of first baseman in baseball, and the second highest in the American League. The Tigers were 11th in first base WAR production. A lot of that has to do with the defense is still a lot left on the table for Torque, and B, I mean, he definitely had cold stretches throughout the year, right? This is a guy who had over 30 home runs on the season and yet finished with comfortably a sub 800 OPS, and that means you're not hitting for average very well. He walked a decent amount. I won't get on him about that because he has really consistently had pretty decent walk numbers. But this is really getting off track here, trying to focus on why he comes back in 2026. I just, barring a large trade, I would like to see him better defensively. I would like to see him hit better against right-handed pitching. I would like to see him hit better with runners in scoring position, among honestly many other things. But I just, given the production and what this lineup needs, which is a right-handed hitting power threat, I have a hard time believing they're going to get rid of maybe their only one of those, regardless of all the flaws and what you think of him as an overall player. So I'm not saying he should be the 3 hitter for the next 10 years or that he's lived up to the 1-1. Okay. I feel like that that always just comes up anytime you say anything positive or negative about him. It's just so controversial. I'm just saying in 2026, he will almost certainly be the Tigers' first baseman on opening day, barring injury. And you have the positional depth outside of him where if he, struggles so much where he's sent down again or whatever, gets hurt, you have other players that have first base experience on the roster. So I don't expect them to really address first base in any capacity this winter. Let's get to some more interesting conversations that are not just nothing's going to change LOL, which is kind of what these first 2 have been. We will do that right after this. First, though, got to talk to you all about our friends over at Game Time. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices, jumping at checkout. It is really frustrating sometimes, and that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee, so you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is actually the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a few taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. The app is super simple. I could even see the exact view of my seat before I bought my tickets. There's so many other great features as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back tomorrow where we have this, barring any big news, same conversation we're having today, but in regards to the pitching staff, which I think will be an interesting conversation to say the least, especially when we get into the bullpen. Today, though, we talk about the offense. Second base, I think, on opening day is just Colt Keith. I don't expect them to do anything crazy here. This is a big change, relatively, from 2025, just because Glaber was, penciled in as the everyday second baseman this whole season. Very solid player. Gleyber Torres had a fantastic first half. The hernia in the second half, we've talked about that a lot. I don't believe Gleyber Torres is back next year. I think that he wants 3 or 4, or even 5 years. And I mean, he's been talking since like 2022 or 2023 about wanting a $100 million deal. Maybe he earned that. And maybe another team will give him that. He had an incredible on-base percentage season. Has really changed completely his approach from what he was in 2019 when he first came up through the Yankees system. I just don't think the Tigers are going to make him a priority, especially not for that high of a price tag. So I expect him to be gone. Do they bring in another player to play second base? And Colt Keith is kind of in a similar role he was this year, where he's like platooning and playing some third and whatnot. Look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think they extended him before he made his major league debut for a reason. I think they believe in him. And there's a lot of stuff he needs to improve on. He needs to improve and really just prove, period, that he belongs defensively at second base every day at the major league level. We saw improvements throughout the 2024 season. Like by the end of the 2024 season, his defense was a little bit better than it was certainly at the beginning of the 2024 season there. But then he got completely moved off the position. So like, who knows where that stands as far as consistency goes at the plate. I mean, it was a roller coaster of a year, to say the least. For Keith, he was terrible against left-handed pitching, like 400 OPS, terrible against left-handed pitching. I saw way too much out of Colt Keith as a prospect for me to be pleased with him turning into a below-average defensive platoon hitter. That is just not what I saw tearing it up through the system. We have to remember how highly regarded this dude was when he was a prospect. That is just not the player I saw. And he's still young and he still has time to improve. And I think that is what they give him. And if it doesn't work in 2026, then they probably pull the plug on it. Maybe they even pull the plug on it before the end of the 2026 season if it's going really poorly. But I think that they have invested enough in him where they are going to put him at second base and say, you're the everyday second baseman. Let's see what happens. And whether he sinks or swims in the 2026 season will determine the future of him and the position. Now, maybe I'm totally off base and the organization just doesn't believe in him and he's, they're going to go sign a second baseman and Colt Keith's, barely going to play this year. But that's kind of how I view that unfolding. Shortstop. I guess next technically in order would be third, but I'm going in order of optics rather than scorekeeping. Shortstop. This is the first one that there's actually a pretty big discrepancy maybe between what I think is going to happen and what I would like to happen. I think that shortstop is just going to be Zach McKinstry and Javy Baez in 2026. And I really hope I'm wrong about that. I hope that they go out and they address shortstop a little bit more aggressively. The Tigers were the 30th team out of 30, obviously, in all of baseball in 2024, so 2 seasons ago, in shortstop production. Okay. They finished dead last in WAR acquired from shortstops. In 2025, that number did go up to 24th in baseball. Baez had I'm so tired of calling it like a good season. It was not a good season. He had, a 6 whatever OPS. His OPS in the second half was 550 or 540. Like, I look at what him and what McKinstry did after the All-Star break, and I think, well, which one is the outlier? Which half is more likely to be the outlier, like statistically speaking? Javy hasn't put up numbers that he did in the first half of 2025 as a Tiger, really. I guess maybe the first couple of months in 2022 when they signed him, or the first year that they signed him. And McKinstry literally has never done what he did in the first half in his entire major league career for any stretch of time. So I am more inclined to believe that the first half was more of the outlier than the second half in the case of these two. Now, they both bring solid defense, and they're both opposite handedness of each other, which is why ultimately I think the Tigers will just stand pat at short. But yeah, McKinstry's OPS second half just under 660. Javy's again like 540, 550. I think the team looks at this as Javy still has a lot of money on the books. He still has a contract remaining. We're not just going to pay him that lump sum and tell him to walk, especially not after we can just tell everybody that he was an all-star this year. And B is the splits. They have no fear platooning a position. Zach McKinstry, serviceable, okay against right-handed pitching. Javy Baez actually had a pretty darn good season offensively against left-handed pitching. Like from start to finish. They were 24th in FWAR out of shortstop in 2025. However, Trey Sweeney also had an entire -1 WAR to attribute to that. So if you take that away, you're actually about 20th in baseball. You can squeak out of the bottom 10 in terms of production from that position. It's still not great. It's still something that I would prefer they address because I'm honestly, like, I do not feel good about another year older of Javy and then Zach McKinstry again, just being the platoon at shortstop and calling it a day. But based on all of those reasons, that's what I think the team's going to do. Third base. First time I will say I think they go out of the organization. And we have all winter to debate and discuss and find out if that's true or who it could be. But I do not think that the opening day starter at third is in the organization. Now, obviously, McGonigal is going to play a factor here, and he could play a factor at short as well. If they are confident enough in his defense, he could be at shortstop, and then McKinstry and Javy can platoon at third base, right? And vice versa. So have a little bit of, nuance, in that conversation in regards to what McGonigal's role is. But every day that goes by, I'm a little bit more and more convinced that third base or short, just wherever McGonigal, they think he's going to play, is more likely to just be either him or a free agent at the position. And if they swing and miss on a free agent, they go after Bregman or somebody else and they don't get him, then they're just going to throw McGonigal there. For the sake of the patience that this front office has shown when it comes to player development and for wanting a right-handed hitter in the lineup, McGonigal, obviously another lefty, I'll slightly lean towards free agent being, an external player, whether maybe trade, whatever you think is more likely to be the third baseman on opening day. I guess maybe they like Band-Aid, a 1-year deal just to kind of ease McGonigal into it. They find a righty on a 1-year deal they like. But I really think that outside help is needed for this organization. There's a clear need for offense. And when you're looking around the diamond, we've already covered, what is this? Catcher, first, second, short. We've already covered 4 of the 8, I guess DH, 4 of the 9 positions. And so far, it's all just returning people that were already here. You need to find somewhere to add a bat. And I think you have the perfect excuse to do that at third base. So that's what I'm banking on. And that's why I'm leaning toward an outside external addition for the hot corner for the Tigers in 2026. Let's talk outfield and DH. We'll do that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, left field, Riley Greene. I know people are frustrated with Riley Greene and are frustrated with the second half and the strikeouts and the swing and miss. I get all of that. And again, I cannot reiterate enough. This is simply just, will he be on the team next year? This is not like, do we build around him? Is he going to be an MVP superstar? Should he bat 2 or 3 in the lineup? This is just, will he be playing left field on opening day? And I think undoubtedly the answer to that is yes. Ultimately, this was his age 24 season, and he hit 36 home runs and was 7th in all of baseball in runs batted in. 7th most RBI in the league. So he's going to be back. There's a ton of things I hope Riley Greene improves on, and there's a ton of things we will talk about throughout the course of the winter in that regard. But from a simple, again, just will he be here or will he not perspective, I don't even think there's too much else to talk about. Yes, he very obviously will. Center field. Talked about this a few times, so we don't have to go super in-depth on this one again. I've kind of said my piece on center field already just because it's been the topic of conversation over the last week or so. I really do think the most likely scenario is they try Meadows, see what happens the first couple of months. If he hits, then that's your center fielder in 2026. If he doesn't hit, then they call Clark up in June, and he's your center fielder the rest of the way, getting at bats. I don't think they're going to, with the expectation and the resources kind of invested in Max Clark, I don't think they're going to go out and get like a big name multi-year free agent in center field. And I also think that they want to see if Meadows can like survive in a full Major League Baseball season, which he has yet to show us just because he hasn't been on the field for a full Major League Baseball season. Right field. I'm going to go free agent again. And I think that this one I might be wrong about, but I'm kind of going out on a limb a little bit here. We'll talk about Carpenter and Winseal Perez here in a second, because obviously they factor into this mix. But I really do think that this is another spot to add. Right field, you don't need elite defense necessarily if you're getting good offensive production. There's also no clear, like, you must have this person play, right field really in the organization. Again, this is like an all-encompassing, all-around player perspective. Carpenter, you obviously want in the lineup. But we'll talk about him in 2 seconds when we talk about designated hitter. I feel like you have the flexibility with those guys and with the right field and DH positions to go out and sign a bat that stabilizes your lineup a little bit more. And that, again, you are looking for any opportunity you can to improve this lineup from last year, from 2025 to 2026, right? It needs it. We saw in the second half that it needs it. You just need more talent there. And you can't obviously nothing's going to change if you just look top to bottom and you go, oh, well, they're all pretty young or under contract for a long time, so I guess we just won't do anything. You got to find holes and you got to find creative ways to add players to this lineup. And I think right field is kind of another perfect opportunity to do that. There's also more corner outfielders than any other offensive position. Like they're everywhere. They're easy to find. And I think that this also gives you another opportunity to add a right-handed hitting guy and I mean, right field, a traditionally powerful position. Like there's some guys out there, whether it's long-term or short-term, that you can go out there and maybe get in that capacity. So I think right field's another opportunity for them to add. DH is where we go back to players that are already here. I really do think that they're going to roll in. This is even assuming that they bring in another outfielder, another right fielder to play or to add to this lineup. I think if that happens, then DH is almost assuredly a Kerry Carpenter / Winsil Perez platoon, just mishmash together. Carpenter isn't awful defensively, and ultimately, if on opening day they put him in right field, I'm not going to be stunned. I think there's still a pretty decent and likely chance that happens. But he still isn't great defensively, and I don't need him in the field. I feel like there's a lot of questions here between both of these players to justify, in my head at least, wanting to get a little bit more stability in the field. We don't really know if Kerry Carpenter is going to hit lefties for 162 games. We don't really know if he's ever going to be good enough, defensively for that as well. He also hit 163 with runners in scoring position and had like an OPS of like 600. Like, I understand the frustration with Torkelson and Greene, and I think that it's justified. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to like jump in the way of criticism being thrown their way, but like Carpenter has comfortably worse risk stats than both of those guys in 2025. So, and then on top of all of that, even from outside of a production standpoint, Kerry Carpenter has missed legitimate time in literally every single one of his MLB seasons. All of them. Every single one. He's had an injury to sideline him for at least 4 weeks. And in a couple of those seasons, much longer than 4 weeks. Winsil Perez hit lefties way better this year. Didn't hit lefties well at all his first year. It struggled mightily down the stretch as well against everything. No matter what was on the mound, he was struggling. So I'm not sure there's confidence that he's a guy guaranteed that you need in right field every day or corner outfield every day long term. So we know that we want Kerry Carpenter's in bat in the lineup. We know that, okay? Especially if a righty is on the mound, we want Kerry Carpenter in the lineup. I'm not saying you don't want these players. I'm just saying maybe you don't need Kerry Carpenter in right field 162 times. So yeah, like, you want his bat in the lineup. You know that they want to give Winsil Perez opportunities when applicable. But I'm not sure that either is a guarantee for 162. So I mean that's kind of, I guess, all of the starting positions in the lineup. Then I think I have one spot remaining on my bench there that I haven't already mentioned or didn't assign to another position, and that's Matt Vierling. Hopefully he's back and healthy. Can play all over the field, gives you depth at third base, gives you depth at center field, also is a right-handed hitter, something that this team, again, wants to add. They already wanted to add it when they had Glaber. If they lose him, then they're going to want to add one of those even more. So if he's healthy, he's going to play consistently and kind of all over the diamond as well. So now you hear all that, you ask yourself, is that enough? Again, this is not like my dream scenario or what I'd want to do. This is what I think is going to happen this offseason. You have the return of Matt Vierling. You have 2 potential spots for free agents, and you have the possible addition of McGonigal and Clark. That's a decent amount of additions, depending on who the free agents you add are. But that's a big if. That's a big caveat in that. Okay, I can't wait to be totally wrong about all of this, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back tomorrow talking about this same conversation, but on the pitching side of things. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope, and I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.